Hello, welcome to the Sovereign Magazine show. I'm Nicole George. Today we have an amazing show with Ebonie Allard, and I'll share more about that in just a second. The Sovereign Magazine show is a transformational experience where conscious conversations meet embodied wisdom. Each episode invites visionary healers, thought leaders, and change makers to share their journeys of awakening, offering listeners practical tools and soul-stirring insight to reclaim their inner authority. And we are going on a year-long journey with Ebonie Allard about the Kismet Codes and embodying your design. And today we're going to be talking about introducing you to embodying your design with the Kismet Codes. And it's okay. I love when we're having technical issues because it means we're not AI. We've been talking about this all week. So don't you worry, Ebonie. I have been embracing all of these flaws, if you will, because that means we're not AI. We're real people, and people will know that. So please introduce yourself and share a little bit more about how the Kismet codes flowed through you.
Thank you. Did just have a ring light coming towards me, and I thought it was going to land on me, but I think I have stopped it in its tracks. So I am one of those rare people who has been self-employed my whole life. I have been a freelancer, a business owner, an entrepreneur, and everything in between because, well, we can go into the kind of the behind the scenes why, the soul contract why, but the growing up why was because I was completely unemployable. And I learned very, very young that people don't like it when you are very, very young and tell them how they can do their jobs better. And so I left employment before I'd even really started and have always worked for myself, and it's moved and evolved. And there's always been this really deep drive within me to create, to share, to hear people's stories, to help them fall in love with themselves, to understand through their stories just how fascinating they are and how, you know, even as a really, really young person, I had a kind of expression, if you like, a good day is a good day and a bad day is a good story. And this is, as I much later discovered, such a huge part of my design. So I've always been a seeker. I've always been into personal development way before anybody else was. I grew up in a household that was so ahead of its time. And now, and we can come back to this at another time, but now I know my IC, which is our roots, our family, where we came from, is in Aries, which is ahead of its time, pioneering, you know, all of those things. And my parents were into astrology. My mum had studied with Osho. There were conversations about spiritual bypassing around the table when I was in primary school. And so this work, this stuff is in my blood and in my bones and in my ancestry. And I have, yeah, 45 years worth of living and breathing it. And when I was much younger, it wasn't cool, it wasn't interesting, it made me really weird. There was a lot of this stuff that was misunderstood and really not associated with science and not associated with anything credible. And allowing myself to hold fast on what I knew to be true and to not hold the wounds of being misunderstood has been a part of embodying my design. And at some point on this journey of being a coach and being a supporter and being someone who pulls threads out of other people and reflects back and helps them see who they truly are, I would get called Ebonie Alchemy. Oh, you're such an alchemist. You shift and change no matter what gets thrown at you. You can always see another perspective and you can always shift that and find your way through. And so I started to get known as Ebonie Alchemy. And a few years ago, after many, many different iterations of business and life and creation, I started learning more about how human design, the gene keys, astrology, the chakras, embodiment, all of these pieces fit together and how they really are the same language. But at that particular time, I was studying both parts of the Kabbalah and my Jewish ancestry and um, Ashkenazi herbalism and like all of these different things, all of these many threads that had captured my attention. And I was also studying human design and the gene key gates, and they originally come from the I Ching and the hexagram. And there's a lot of information. There are 64 codes. And I am really good with stories and not great necessarily with details or with facts or with memorizing things. And so I thought, how am I ever going to learn these codes? They seem really important. They've got my attention. I'm really interested in them. And I also see that these 64 codes, they were in the I Ching, which is the oldest book known to man. These are stories that we have shared forever. I want to understand them. I want to learn how to weave them into my work. And then I realized that they link to the 64 codes of DNA. And so I was like, even more like, I really want to learn these codes. I want them to be in me, not something I have to look up every time. I want to understand their essence. And so I started contemplating them. I started meeting them in the same way I learned astrology with Virginia Rosenberg, who I adore. And her version of astrology is evolutionary, and it's really about converging or meeting each planet, each archetype. And, we get that when we draw the symbols out, we feel their essence and we can meet the essence. And so I was like, right, okay, I'm going to sit with the essence of all of these codes and start to understand them. And as I did, I felt I wanted to draw them because that's how I do anything. Until it goes through my pen, until it moves through my body, I haven't really got it. And so I started to draw them. And I created these cards, which are called the Kismet Code cards, because I didn't want to use anybody else's language for them. And I wanted to include numerology and astrology and frequency and all of the threads that I have within me in them. But I wanted to make them accessible for everybody and to really hold their essence, and for you to be able to understand them on a visual way as well as a story way, all of these things. And so I started doing it for myself. And the group I was in studying at the time, as I shared them while I was talking about them, said, "Oh, we want these. Please, please, can you make them? Make them so that we can have them." And so I responded, manifesting generator, in case you haven't figured that out. And I created a Kickstarter, and it was 2 years ago in February, and we made £11,000 in 2 weeks, and within that was like February, and I had my launch party with them in my hands in May, and though that's the story of the Kismet Codes. And for me, the difference between Kismet is an old Jewish word, actually, or old original language word. Sometimes people say Turkish, sometimes Egyptian, but it's a root word, and it means your lot in life. And so it's become known as your destiny, because what you do with your lot in life is either fate or destiny, depending on how you work with it. And so for me, the idea that these codes have a shadow, which I refer to as the seed, and a gift, which is the bloom, and then a fruit, which is the highest, or I should say the city, the highest expression, which is the fruit, this thing that drops, And so there's a highest potential, but not all seeds become blooms and not all blooms fruit. And so this is where we start to talk about destiny and fate and free will, and all of these beautiful concepts come up. And for me, the idea is always, I want everyone to reclaim their full range and become full of themselves, and to honor their incarnation intentions. And our incarnation intentions are to have a physical and emotional experience and express that for the highest and greatest good of all. Because when we look at art or when we hear people talk, we have a reaction or a response, and that impacts us in some way, and then we carry on. And that is the point. When people say, what's the purpose? What's my purpose of living? It is to live, it's to enjoy and have an experience in a physical body and have an emotional experience, because we couldn't do that without our physical form. And then to share that with each other. And yeah, that people like to complicate it, and it's really not that complicated. Yeah.
I think it's complicated. There's so many moving pieces to it that that's why I love having you around, and I enjoy coming on your monthly calls, because if anybody is interested, join Ebonie's private community, the Maven Haven. She has a free monthly call, and she just breaks everything down into bite-sized pieces so that people like me can digest it. Because for me, it is so overwhelming, and you have to tell me the same thing over and over and over again. And someday I will get that concept. But I do want to create some foundational things for people, because I want to know if we use the language interchangeably, or if they're separate things, so that we are all clear on the show when we're talking about certain things. So we have Kismet codes, we have human design, we have gene keys, we have astrology, and we have soul contracts. Which ones are kind of interchangeable, or which ones are their own things?
Okay. So ultimately, we all have a soul contract or soul contracts. And those soul contracts were pre incarnation, when we were all one. It's such a difficult thing to explain, right? There's this
Hmm.
concept of collective consciousness, which most people get a kind of understanding of. So before we individuated into a physical form, we were part of the collective consciousness, and we were energy. And at the moment of your inception, and the moment that you were, well, not inception, but the moment of your birth, you transformed from energy into matter. And it's that particular moment that comes out as your birth date. And that birth date is a string of numbers which holds your astrological information, it holds your human design information, it holds your numerology, like all of the languages, all the modalities are just an interpretation or somebody's framework to interpret your essence, that pinpricked from heaven into earth. And so astrology is the language of correspondence between earth and sky. And then human design is, and astrology has been around since Alexandria, like a long, long time. And again, like if you want really technical astrology and human design with dates and facts, I'm not your teacher. If you want stories that might not be 100% accurate, then I'm your girl. So, astrology has been around a really, really long time, because before we had electricity, we had luminaries, our sun and our moon and the stars, and they lit the way for us. They showed us information, and they helped us to understand the seasons and each other. And so today we can still look up and see it, but this is where different types of astrology exist, because the constellations and the planet have moved, and they don't sit exactly where they did. So the astrology that I work with is called tropical, and it's based on archetypes rather than sidereal, which is based on the exact location of the stars. Now, and human design came along 1987, a guy called Ra Uru Hu, who had another name that wasn't his birth name, but he adopted it, he became it, and he was Canadian. But in 1987, he was living on Ibiza, and he had an experience, an 8-day experience, where he was given the information that became human design. So it hasn't been around that long. 1987. I was 7 then. And like with any of these modalities, you have people who were there at the beginning who are purists. And purists would say, if it isn't what Ra said, it isn't true. They would say there are 4 types. I say there are 5, but they would say that there are 4. And this is the same as the Bible. This is the same as any other teaching, right? We're all just human beings interpreting information, writing it down in a way that feels good. And then other people are trying to deal with the trauma of being human. And they're like, let's lean on this and go all in. And my preference is that people experiment. And why I love human design is it's always been cited as an experiment. And overall, it's supposed to take 7 years for you to be able to assimilate the information and to get your human design. And all of these books, and so human design is made up of astrology and the chakra system and the Kabbalah tree of life and the I Ching and quantum mechanics. So it's 5 modalities synthesized together. So he didn't create anything new. He blended them in a particular way. So in terms of when you said, is it this, are they interchangeable? Human design blends other modalities together. So the chakra system existed, astrology existed, quantum mechanics existed, the I Ching existed, and the hexagram information. So the hexagram, the I Ching, the gene keys, all the same, 64 codes. I call them the Kismet codes because they are the codes that everything else is generated from. And even you could go before them, before the Kismet codes or before the gene keys or the I Ching or the hexagrams, which was originally called, or it translates as the Book of Changes or the Book of Life. And it's made up of these hexagrams of dashes, straight lines, and broken lines, which are masculine and feminine. So we've got these 64 codes that are made up of yin and yang, or masculine and feminine, and they are coded through every single human being. And at the time of your birth, some of those were active. So at the time of your birth, the planets were all in a particular position. And as you were born, that information was coded into your neutrinos. And neutrinos are really, really tiny cell formations inside of you. And so 70% of your neutrinos come from the sun. And so your sun sign is the one that is most known because it's the one that's enriches you. It's what you need to thrive. It's what you are here to shine a light on. It's a big part of our lives, just like the day is. But the nighttime is also important, and all of these other little facets in us are also important. And human design adds in a beautiful layer that wasn't really added in before, which is your body, your design. So I'm sure we'll get to it, maybe not today, but when we look at a body graph, when we look at a human design chart, you see 2 columns of information. And the column on the right-hand side, this is the natal chart information. This is your personality or your mind, and it's the same data, the exact same data as you will find in your astrology chart or your numerology. It's your birth date, and your numerology just looks at the birth date. The astrology looks at the planets. So does your human design. They look at them slightly differently, but they're using the same data. And then in human design, on the left-hand side, this is your vehicle, this is your design, this is your body, it's your unconscious. All of those names I've just listed, they are interchangeable for the same thing. And they are from the same time and place, but 88 days prior. Because in human design, 88 days prior is when the soul drops into the body.
And the Kismet codes are a conglomeration of all of that and your interpretation of it. Okay, so we have this foundation, beautifully done foundation. I learned so many things, and you've been in my world forever. Like I said, she's just like a wealth of information, always teaching me something new. So I would assume many people who come to you feel disconnected from their body. And when you pull up a chart like you've done with mine before, you're like, oh, everything just makes sense. Like you literally are like a little doctor looking like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. This is her prescription. That's how I feel when I talk to you because you can see in my design how I am made up. And so when somebody is not fully embodying their design, how do they begin? I
Mm.
fell into human design. It kind of found me in a really strange way, and I haven't dug as deep as I would like to. I will someday, I will. All in my highest timeline. Um, but when somebody feels so disconnected from their body, from their essence, from their purpose, where should they begin?
This is a beautiful question, and I'm going to do that really coach therapist thing where I answer it in a roundabout way, also storyteller, because there's one little thing that just keeps coming almost to the edge, and then I'm not saying it, so I'm going to say it. All of these scripts, all of these texts, they're written in a way where, and you've said it quite a lot as well, right? You've said, when I read it, I just can't retain the information. So the Kabbalah Tree of Life or the Kabbalah and all of these texts were written in a way, and they have always been, it's always been said that they've been written in a way that you cannot absorb the information contained until you are ready.
Mhm, mhm,
This is initiatory work. It is alchemy. It has to be done in a particular order. And people these days love to rush. They want everything now. But when you do everything now, you don't absorb it. This is my problem. So I'm very, not very vocal, but very clear on my line with AI. And AI is a great tool in the same way as my vacuum cleaner is. I'm really grateful for my washing machine. It's great. However, there are some things I really care about, and I will not stick them in the washing machine, right?
mhm,
And one of the things about working with AI is we want this information so quickly, or we want to like get to the end result, have a thing written or an image made so quickly that we're missing our own embodiment of it. We're missing our own memory making, meaning making of it, mark making of it. It's in the interaction with other human beings. It's in the interaction with the context and the story itself that we learn.
mhm.
And if we don't do that, if we're not engaging with it, if we're just getting another report or another download or another test or another thing, it's a dopamine hit and it feels good very quickly. It feels like sugar, but it's not nutritious. It isn't actually serving you. It isn't changing you on a cellular level. And so, my work isn't for everyone. And I do this really tricksy thing, which is that I make it feel playful and I make it feel light. And it is just stories and just a conversation. But what's happening underneath is embodiment and healing and assimilation and alchemy. And I have been told this all my life in every area, that I help people to eat their vegetables without knowing they're eating vegetables.
I like
So you asked me, repeat, can you remember what the essence of the question was? Because I wanted to get that in before I answered it. No.
Uh, we've gone so I think if somebody's feeling disconnected,
Yeah, great. Thank
right?
you. That was it. So,
Okay.
all of that is important because if you're feeling disconnected, you want the answer. And that's what happens, right? You're like, I want the answer, but you won't absorb it until you're ready to absorb it. That's where I was
Mm,
going with that. Thank you. That's really helpful. And
mhm,
so there is a hierarchy of these things, and anyone who teaches human design, and what I teach and what I share is a mixture of all these different things. And I'm not necessarily, this is why people always find it really difficult to be like, oh, I need a human design expert, or I need a Gene Keys expert, or I need an astrologer. And then they're like, oh, you're too many things. And so I was talking about that with somebody the other day, and it's like, I the difference and the thing that's really important to me is this embodiment piece. It is really about embodying it. So you will hear everybody say strategy and authority. Those are the most important things, right? And again, like, what does that mean? Well, it means that the most important thing and the first place to start is with your own experiment around your type and um, how that type is designed to operate and move. And we will do that in our next session together.
You're so good at that great transition there. I was like, and on her next show, we're going to be talking about embodying your type and understanding your aura. Oh my gosh.
Well, I did design the sessions in order on purpose. And I was like, okay, so what's the next piece that you need? Right. Okay. And so what's the next piece that you need? And
Yeah.
that, if you want to learn human design and you want to kind of embody your design, come on this journey with us because that's what we're going to do. You're going to get little half an hour snippets where I will wander off and you will laugh and you'll enjoy our conversation and you'll accidentally learn human
Yeah.
design and about your Kismet codes and your soul contract.
I love this so much. And if you're like one of those people like me who are like, I need to know what my human design is, and I need to know what that thing looks like that she was talking about on the left or the right. She has a beautiful free quiz, right? Not quiz,
Well, because
is
it's
it?
there's no quiz involved, it's data, so it's science, right? So you
Yeah.
need your birth time, date, and place. And there are people who rectify if you don't know. And if you don't know, because I get asked this so many times, if you don't know, put in midday and then put like 8 a.m., put 8 p.m., see if anything changes. And also trust your body. But there are ways to rectify it, but go and play it. So ebonieallard.com/get-chart. We'll make sure it's somewhere near. And you can get free charts there. And then also I have free foundational reading reports. Now, these are, if you went and booked a reading with somebody else, this is what they would give you as that first level. And I am way too generous and I give it away for free. And people also go in and like, there's too many, pick one. If you're interested in human design, and I would always do human design first because it gives you the overall design. And then the gene keys or the frequency report is going to take you on a journey of your own shadows to light. And the astrology piece brings in houses. And what that does is it talks to different areas of your life and the journey that you're going on in your life around your career, around your relationships, around your body. And so they're all there for you. And we'll come back to it, but I'm just so excited by it because my physical copy arrived today. I have this big, beautiful book. You can get this in physical form in the UK and in the States and digital form everywhere. And this book is the Everything Soul Contract Cheat Codes Guidebook Part 1 because I really love a succinct title. But this book has got everything that we are talking about in this show in it and spaces for you to write your information in because I'm so bored of people getting reports and then doing nothing with them and not being able to remember. And until you write them down, and that RAS can start doing all the work for you, you're not going to learn it. But if you get a book like this and you put all of your little notes in it and you play along or you work with me or with anybody else around this stuff, there's so many little spaces in here for you to put your little notes and doodle in it. And that is how you will learn and embody it and make it your own.
We're going to make sure that link is in the show notes so everybody can receive one. And maybe that is the nudge that I needed to start embodying all of my human design. Okay, so thank you for everyone who has joined us today. If you want to come on this 1 year journey with us, like, share, comment, subscribe so that you can get all of the episodes. We're going to be coming back to be talking about our type and understanding our aura next time with Miss Ebonie. And she's also in our community, community.sovereign-magazine.com. So if you have any questions, you can always pop in there, especially into her free group and talk with her. She's absolutely amazing and a gem for this world. Thank you for being here today, and we'll see you on the next one.